And it's a special meaning for me because I was born 6 weeks early. 6 weeks early in the Coombe myself, because my mum wasn't very well. She suffered with very high blood pressure at the time. So it's that's where I was born, and I'm thrilled that you're doing something for them.
Thank you. That's amazing to know. I didn't know we had that connection. And we have a lovely piece of art from Pigsy as well, and not giving too much away, I believe the year on that, and It's a Boy, is quite significant to you as well.
Yes, same year. Yeah.
Same as myself. It was a great vintage, that one.
It was 1993. Could pick time.
Right, so that's interesting that it was such a significant year to us all.
Yes.
Dermot, you recently did your own house.
Yes.
Did you? I like the rest of us, I presume doing your own job is much harder than doing anybody else's.
I was really looking forward to it. I couldn't wait to get stuck into it. It was an opportunity to do something for myself and for my family that I kind of do for everybody every day of my life. And I was so excited going into it. And it was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. I think it was just, I think clients direct you a lot. And, you know, you'll always have 4 or 5 choices to make on every item, on every project. But what will kind of sway you in one way is what you think the clients will like, or what you think will reflect their personality or them. And the problem is when it's you're stuck looking at every book, at every magazine, and you love this, you love this, you love this. Which direction do you take it in? So, and I had very preconceived ideas, and everything that I tell clients not to do. I always tell clients to go into every project with no preconceived ideas, how it's going to look, how it's going to feel. Let the project take on a life of its own. But I had preconceived ideas going into it, what I wanted it to look like. And then slowly that started to become untangled because materials wouldn't work out, or they just didn't look great together. It wasn't. So it started with the terrazzo was the kind of the key to it, which was a big material that we've used in the entire ground floor. And I had assumed that I'd go for a lovely white terrazzo. The space was too big for it. It was going to look like, and I know we're raising money for a hospital, but it was going to look like a hospital. It was going to look very, very clinical. So the terrazzo had to change. That then changed the timber floors. That changed the kitchen. And so that preconceived idea in my head was gone. And I had to then do that very difficult task of allowing the building to kind of design itself, which is the best way for it to happen. But it pulled at every gut inside of me when trying to do that. So it was a really difficult job. But I was lucky because I suppose I had a few people around me. I'd a really good friend of mine, Kieran, who I worked with a lot. And, you know, he was just there in the background. I needed to kick up the arse every once in a while. Yeah, that's the right decision. Or for me, nobody can design anything in isolation. You do need somebody. And I think in a lot of the time when I am working with clients by myself, if the clients will tell you, they'll give you the nod, or you'll see it in their eyes when their eyes light up when they see one thing, or when they kind of look a bit dejected when they see another thing, and you kind of work through it. I didn't have that, so I had that in Kieran.
And did Mrs. Bannon get involved?
She did. But I suppose I've lived with Mrs. Bannon. We'll call her Louise. So I've lived with Louise for a long time now. God, we're 20 years living together. So I kind of know what she likes and what she doesn't like. And basically, a lot of the decisions on the house couldn't really be changed. Like a lot of the materials that we used, the shapes, the materials on the outside, the design of it, none of that the house, the designed itself. I know that sounds really weird, but that's what architects do. You start off with a blank page and you start to look for things that identify the design. So that can be your site. It can be where the light is coming from. It can be how a family uses a house. So when you get to know a family, you think, well, no, there's no point in putting a huge, big, good sitting room in front of this. They'll never use it. But they need an open plan space. Or there's no point in me putting the kitchen into the middle of the open plan space because they hate the smell of cooking and they're neat freaks, and that will just, so there's they're called your constraints. So with every project, you kind of look for your things that are constraining you, because they're the things that would inform the design. So I suppose they informed the design, and I kind of ran things by Louise. And it's funny because look, well, this sounds very sexist, but in Ireland, we kind of have this kind of the lady of the house looks after the house and the man kind of doesn't care. And it's actually couldn't be further from the truth, because in every project I'm involved in, men are heavily involved and are very interested, and are becoming more interested in kind of homes and interiors. And, you know, if you look at half the Instagram pages, they're men, and they're kind of building houses, they're doing things. So there's been a big change. It's not just the domain of the woman anymore to care about the house. I think men are starting to care about where they live, and they're very proud of their homes, which I don't know if that was true maybe 30 years ago. And it's a bit like Jamie Oliver kind of, you know, came along and taught men that it's okay to cook. Now it's, you know, everybody, if you can't cook, you need to be ashamed of yourself. So I'm hoping that's going to be the same when it comes to our homes and our houses and interiors, that everybody cares about the quality of the space they live in, and everybody cares about where they live and why things are happening like that in their house, not just to leave it up to somebody else.
And your kids got to pick their own paint colours in the house. If you didn't like them, how are you going to deal with that one?
How do you know I didn't like them?
I don't. Did you give them a steer, or did you just accept it?
Trade secret. I suppose I asked them what general colours they liked.
Right.
And then, so James wanted orange and Tom wanted green. So then I went out and I picked 4 greens that I would like. And 4 oranges. And then James didn't pick the right orange. So we changed it, and he didn't notice. So they were, more than a steer.
He might notice now. And orange wouldn't be a colour necessarily associated with Dermot, albeit Adele, my co-host's favourite colour in the world. So would you say you're, you know, afraid of colour, or do you stick with the same palette? What way does that work for you?
Do you know what it is? I tend to like homes that you paint them once, and this kind of goes against every interior designer in the country is going to be shivering up and down. But I love, I always remember when I was in college visiting Finland, and all the houses are just painted white, and the timber floorboards, they're really proud if they've been down for 50 years. They invest in things, and they invest in really nice materials, and they'll invest in a really nice chair and a really nice couch, but they tend to want to hang on to them for the rest of their lives. And so I'm a bit like that. I like to paint, like the last house we lived in, it was a colour by colour trend called Snow Ballet. And we just repainted it that color every 3 or 4 years, over and over again. And I tend to kind of see what the house informs you to do, and then just leave it. And so I kind of, it's not that I'm afraid of color, but I just think white and nice natural materials and kind of the simpler, plainer colors are easier to live with. And I think a lot of color, I love it in magazines, and I love it in other people's houses, and I love going into a place that's been painted really dark. But a lot of these things are kind of done, and a lot of the strong colors are done to be repainted every 4 or 5 years. Would you agree with me?
I would, yeah, absolutely.
Like a lot of interior design, and I'm not demeaning it in any way. It's a bit like fashion. You know, colors can be in fashion and out of fashion, and but that's in a good way, because it's energizing. In the same way that, you know, you get a brand new top that's really trendy this year, and you feel really good in it, and it feels kind of, oh, I've changed up something and there's something. I think you can do that with interiors as well. And I think you can change up things, and it can lift your mood and lift your spirit. And I think for some people, they love it. I'm just not that person. I'm the kind of the steady Eddie who likes just to see a home evolve. So for me, color comes from hanging up all the kids' pictures, you know, that they bring home from school, or just the stuff of life, or if we buy a new piece of art, or if you know, it's the house gets added to bit by bit. Whereas I think sometimes when you choose very strong colors, you're making a statement, and that becomes the biggest thing in the room. And I never wanted color to be the biggest thing in the room. I'd like it to be, as I said, like a piece of art, or a nice piece of furniture, or a lovely rug, or just the stuff of life. You know, you cook a dinner and you lay it out on the table. I don't like it to be the strongest thing, but I'm not afraid of it. Well, maybe I am a little bit. But but like the room I'm in now is painted green. Can you see that?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. And would you wear bright colours yourself?
Bright blues. I think that's one of the things, and it's not that I would have worn bright colors. It's just I've been working in television for 13 years. Okay, so I know what looks. Can I say the word? No, I can't. No, I can't swear. I know it looks terrible on me, and sometimes what looks really great in a shop. When you try it on at home, and you can look really great in the mirror, but when you see yourself on television wearing things, you think, "Oh God, that's horrendous. That's awful." I've learned just to play it safe, and navy suits me, and blues suit me, and that's it. But I've worn oranges and stuff like that, so I'm not afraid of, and I'd love to wear bright colors, but I'm a bit afraid because to be experimental. Because when you see yourself on television, you see, nah, that didn't work. That looks horrendous. It's much easier just to play it safe. And I think a lot of architects do. They all just wear black, don't they, all the time? Except for you got Hugh Wallace coming on. He's got a penchant for his shirts, doesn't he?
He does actually, yeah, and his lovely tweed jackets would colour through them as well. Yeah, I'm not saying anything bad about any designers, any architects, any garden designers. However, they're all amazing.
I can say it. I always remember when you went into first year in architecture school, you were wearing all the clothes that you would have worn in school, and then suddenly it became the black polo neck became the thing, and just you started to wear black jeans, black polo necks, and that was it. You didn't have to think about it.
And a leather satchel.
A leather satchel. I'm kind of but I'm one of these. I'm one of these guys. I like a uniform, so I have about 4 or 5 shirts that I wear over and over again. I wear the same pair of jeans practically every day. But like as well, when you work in Room to Improve and programs like that, like I'm wearing a high vis most of the time. So you're and even the yellow high vises don't suit me. I was told by a cameraman, so that's why I wear an orange high vis, which is I shouldn't be wearing an orange high vis as an architect. I should be wearing a yellow one, and I should be wearing a white cap because I'm an architect. But I wear a blue one. Or I think it's changed over to green. It's all to do with light and how you look on camera. And that didn't come from me. That came from cameramen. So it's
you have to keep them happy.
Yeah, I'm probably too self-aware at this stage to be experimental. But when it comes to color, no, I've do you know something? I find it much easier to be more experimental on programs like Room to Improve, where if a client comes in and says, "I'd really love a dark color," then I go for it, and so you'll notice a bit of color creeping in Room to Improve now. In the
absolutely, absolutely. And here's, now that you mentioned that, what's your feelings now after speaking to Daniel O'Donnell on wooden tiles?
Yeah, I still don't like wooden tiles. I suppose I said before, I love natural materials that age. Like I love a timber floor that, like if you get a lighter floor, they go this lovely honey yellow. If you get a darker floor, it kind of wears away. I love a natural material that kind of takes on the patina of life. And I love to see things that are a little bit battered and a bit worn. So if you go into an old country house and you see a floor that's been there for 150 years, you don't want to see you don't want to see it in perfect condition. You want to see kind of one of the things we did, like a couple of the doors in our house, because our house is an old 1930s house, and we have a couple of. I'll swing it around. There's, I don't know, the other which side is the door on? It's this side. Can you see the door there?
Yes.
So they're all old 1930s doors, and the handles are very high on them, and I love them because they were, part of the original house. But we had to replace a couple of them because they were just broken and warped, and they're not the same. I made them identical. We got exact replicas of the existing doors. But you know what it is? What it's missing? It's missing 80 years, or it's nearly 100 years now. 1930, 90 years of paint. It's missing that. It's the corners are too sharp. They're so. I like things to be authentic. I can't even speak. Authentic. I like things to be authentic and real and of its time. So if you're doing something now, make it really contemporary, really modern. But if you move into an old house, I'm all for protecting it and keeping it. Like we kept all the old fireplaces. We kept all the, we kept everything in the house that was here. And even upstairs in the bedrooms, all the fireplaces, lots of people rip them out because it's a waste of space. You can get a wardrobe up against it. But I actually designed the wardrobe layout around the fireplace. So we have a little dressing area in the bedroom. Sounds very posh, doesn't it? But it's basically a corridor. It's all based around the original fireplace. So we've kept the original fireplace, and that dictated that space.
So you've loads of ways to keep all the old stuff. And if you were going to go again, would you buy a site and build a brand new one, or would you, are you happy that you have that house that's 90 years old and all that patina, and then do what you did to it? Like, what would be the next one if you were doing it?
The next one, like, I won't be doing a big project like this ever again. Never.
Never say ever.
No. Well, maybe I'm too fresh out of it.
You haven't forgotten the labour pains yet.
No, and I'm not qualified to comment on that. As I've been told by my wife hundreds of times. I think the next one will be trading down, or a kind of a smaller house. Like this house was, we did this house because the last house we were in was, we had no kids when we bought it. It was tiny. We loved it. We absolutely loved the house, but we were all like, I was kind of getting to the stage. I was going out to work, doing room to improve, and working in the office and all that, and coming home to a house with 2.5 bedrooms, and we had 3 kids. And we'd one tiny bathroom that 2 people couldn't, and nobody believed I lived in a house like that. But I kind of got to the stage where a cobbler's shoes are always the worst, and you go home and you think, oh, sure, it's fine, it's grand. And Louise would say, oh, there's no storage in this house, I can't put anything anywhere. So I kind of ignored that for about 5 years, and then this house came up for sale on just the next road over, which was great because we wanted to stay in the area because the kids were in school here, they're in sports clubs, and we're part of the community here, so we didn't really want to move. So this house came up, but it was a wreck, and I thought, look, we'll do this once and we'll make it for the family growing up, because my youngest is 8 and my eldest is 15, so we've got about another 10 years of it being a very, very busy house, with all their friends coming over. And that's what I wanted. I wanted space that, if Sarah says I want to have 6 girls over tonight, and James said I'm having the lads, that it can happen. And I want it to be an open door policy, that anybody can come in or out of the house, that this is their home. And I actually did it more for them than I did for myself, because I was quite happy. I had my bed, I had my television, I was grand. But this was for them. This was for the family to give them space to to do what they wanted for the next 10 years. And I think you realize as your kids get older, and you probably second this, like, time goes quickly.
The older they get, the faster it goes.
It goes. And so, like, there's no point in me waiting another 5 years. It was actually going to be too late then. So we did this now, and we've struggled, and we're struggling to pay it off when we're doing all that. But it's, that it's worth it, because they have now the house that they kind of, they can spread out, and it's their home. But the next project will be a small little downsizer. And I sea swim a lot. That's my
wow.
So it's I would love a little cottage by the sea where I can walk down some steps and straight into the sea. So, but tiny, like I'm talking about 2 bedrooms or 1 bedroom and a living room. That's all I want.
We'll keep the eyes open for that one.
We have another 20 years to go before that, though.
Well, you could have a second one. I'll get you on the project. You were talking about the children there. How do they describe you? Are you like an embarrassing parent like the rest of us, or are you the cool dad because you're on telly, or what way do they see it?
Embarrassing. Yeah, I'm not cool in the slightest. And actually, like, they get really irritated with me. Whenever I'm out and about, people come up and chat to you, which I love that. I don't mind, because it means that they're engaging with the show, they're engaging with what I do. But the kids go mad. Why are you always talking, Dad? Why are you always talking? But like, to be honest with you, my eldest daughter watches the show, and she just watches it and no comment after it. And I really like that house or whatever, but it's not a big deal. And the younger 2, the 12-year-old and the 8-year-old, don't watch it at all. And I remember being on a plane, we all went over to Florida for a holiday a couple of years ago, and the way you've got the TVs on the back of the seats, and I said to them, would you Room to Improve was on, and I said, would you like to watch that? And both of them said no. I said, but we've got 8 hours, maybe you could watch a half-hour show, maybe or even a little bit of it. And they said no. So they said they watched 50 Ways to Kill Your Mommy instead. So
yeah, Baz has a lot to answer for. I've had to watch that with my teenager as well.
But the thing is, they're it's just for me. That's just what Dad does. That's work, and they don't really care. And it doesn't bother them. I suppose I've been on television since they were very young.
Yeah.
I'm just Dad to them. I'm annoying. I'm embarrassing, but I'm embarrassing regardless whether I'm on telly or not. I'm embarrassing just walking down the road with them. So, yeah, the telly is just Dad's work, and nobody pays too much attention to it in the house, which is great in a way, because it's not something they focus on. I think as they get a bit older, I watch it. Other kids start saying to them, your dad's on telly, and it's kind of like, oh really? Oh yeah, it's not a big deal.
It's amazing, isn't it, how they just take it in their stride because you've been doing it all along. And you, who grew up or spent some of your childhood in Egypt.
Yes, my dad was a horticulturalist, and we spent 3 years in Egypt. So when I was from the age of 7 to about 10.
And how did that affect your, not your life, I don't mean the deep and meaningful, but, your childhood in Egypt, it was a complete change. Then you came back to Ireland, you're looking at different architecture as well. But what was it like in Egypt?
The thing that struck me the most was the poverty. Egypt was like they were coming out of a war at the time in the Sinai deserts. It was a very poor country, and very busy. I couldn't, the thing that hit me was two things: were poverty and the amount of people crammed into the city. I think tourists get to see one part of Cairo and Egypt, and this is back then. There was the Hilton Hotel in the middle of the city, and that was kind of a little bit away from it. But we lived out in the suburbs, and it was incredibly busy. It was incredibly it was amazing to see. It was an amazing country to watch how so many people crammed in the city could live. And I always remember one kind of image is the trams. They used to have these metros, and people they were electrified, so they had the the things that the wire above. But people they'd sit on the roof, and they were this close to getting electrocuted because they hung out of windows. There was no such thing as queuing to get onto a bus. If you wanted to, this is how busy the city was. If you wanted to get onto a bus, you ran behind it, you grabbed it anywhere, and you lifted yourself up and squeezed it. There's no glass in any of the windows. People it was chaos, and driving there was chaos, and everything was chaos. But I suppose it was that experience, and then coming back to Ireland, and kind of being thrown from one extreme world to another was huge for me at the time.
So you understand the whole homeschooling thing as well, because you were homeschooled for a little while, weren't you, over there?
I was, yeah. Oh, you've done your research. Well, I say homeschooled. My poor mother, we gave her absolute hell. She chased us around the house. We didn't because it was our mother. We didn't really listen, and I kind of got that a little bit now in my kids. So trying to teach Tom one verb. I remember trying to teach Tom one verb here one morning, and he was lying backwards on the chair, and he was going, "Oh, I can't." And I said, "This is productivity wise. This isn't. It's what he's going to learn is not worth the effort." So I kind of gave up. But I think like a lot of people, we tried our best, didn't we?
Absolutely. And you know what? I have two friends who are teachers and both give me the same advice. Keep their mental health well at home. We'll do the catching up later when they get back to school. So don't stress, Yeah. I bought into that one a lot.
Yeah, and I did the same. I actually found that they were kind of getting stuck into Xboxes and all of that. And I just threw them into the car, and we went for a swim, and we went to the sea, and they came back chatting, and it was something about that my kids all love the sea, and they love going swimming, and they love sea swimming. But there's something, you can't bring a phone, a device, a screen into the sea, and they jump in and out of the water, and for those couple of hours they forget all of that, and then the drive home in the car, they're chatty, they're different kids. So that's our little kind of method for bringing them back to reality.
Oh yeah, and it's a good one as well to have. Dermot, tell us something we don't know about Dermot Bannon.
I don't know. Is there anything that people don't know about me? Because I've been doing this job for so long. There's let me see, what don't you? I've told you I like sea swimming. I love Christmas.
Do you?
Yeah, and I love, nobody believes me, but I love cheesy, tacky decorations.
No way!
Yeah.
Oh,
the more tinsel, the better. I like the whole, it's the only time of the year that I don't mind a bit of cheese going on. Yeah, oh yeah, and glittery, the better. I don't know, maybe it's, I loved Christmas as a child. And I remember I used to lie on the ground at home in my living room watching the Christmas tree with the lights on it, and I still love that. And I'm not into kind of, do you know the way people have themes for their Christmas trees, and this year we're going gold, and this year we're going almond, and this year we're going, and I hate all of that. Chuck everything on and some and yeah, glittery, tacky. That's kind of what I love.
I have a couple of questions here as well that I have to ask. Somebody wanted to know, do you play a musical instrument?
No, I would love to, and I'd love to be able to sing. I'd love to be able to play. That's one thing that I've struggled with all my life. You know, when you go to parties or somebody's house and then people start a bit of a sing song, I always dread. I sit then and I dread the way I was singing, because I can't. And I remember my cousin got married a couple of years ago to there's a very famous Kerry footballer from a long time ago called the Bomber Liston, and my cousin married the Bomber's son. But anyway, we were in the bar late that night, and the Bomber Liston is a huge, big guy. And I was a little bit intimidated by him because we used to see him in Croke Park when we were kids. And he said, "You'll sing." And I said, no, I won't. And he says, "You'll sing." And I said, I won't. "You'll sing Wonderwall. Will you buy Oasis?" And I said, no. And then he made me do it, and I dreaded it because I was waiting for my turn, and I couldn't relax for that whole hour. Then I sang Wonderwall, and he said, look, you had to go anyway. And I didn't even want to I didn't even want to do it in the first place. So I can't sing, I can't play a musical instrument. I would love to learn.
And I suppose to try and find the time to do it is hard. But speaking about time, you have a really busy architectural practice, you're on TV, you're filming all over the country. You know, do you find time to actually sit down and do what you love, which is design? Or is it quite stressful to find the time to do that?
Oh, I suppose, no, it's not. Like, that's really what I do in the office. I do the sketches, and I kind of formulate all the initial designs, and then I've got a great team in the office, and they take it from there, and they kind of run with it. But I'm always, I suppose I look after all the design end of the office with the lads, like, because I'm not, but they're I think a lot of clients like to know what I would think on a project, but the lads are amazing in the office. Like, I have a really talented bunch, and some of them are better designers than me, but I'll never tell them that. But yeah, I suppose it's just learning your limitations, and so I know what I can do, and I know what I can do well, and I also know what I need. So for filming days, I need to be there. Like, I can't delegate that to somebody else. But I set up the practice when I was doing Room to Improve, so I kind of, the two of them have kind of run concurrently always. So I suppose the key to it is never to have, the practice hasn't grown that big. So you know, we've always kept it small so that I know every project, and I know what's going on. There isn't a project in the office that I don't know about, that I'm not aware of where it's at, what are the problems with it, what do we need to overcome, and it's just managing your time that way. Is that, you know, one day is for meeting clients, another day is for going through all of the designs in the office, and we all sit down together and we go through them one by one, and then there's another day maybe on doing drawing work for Room to Improve. And then there might be 2 days filming a week. So you learn to kind of divide it. And then there's times of the year when Room to Improve is very, very quiet, and you might only do 1 day every 2 weeks on it. And then there's other times when Room to Improve towards the end might take, you know, it could take 5 days in 1 week. So you just have to, you kind of balance your project. So it is kind of, it's ever changing, and you just make sure that everything is kind of looked after, and then you can dive in and dip out whenever you need to. But like, I know that with the lads in the office, that if there's a problem on a project, if I can sit down with them and work it out in 5-10 minutes and say, okay, move this is done, I know that it's handled. You know, I don't have to then sort it out and draw it all up and issue it to the contractor. I know that everything's, so it's really just about surrounding yourself with great people. And I'm really lucky. I didn't picked them because they're, well, I did pick them because they're great people, but they've turned out to be amazing people. And even in the television, you know, you get, if you get a good team, a good production team, and you're all working together, like even producers get very hands-on, and, you know, they're telling me, Dermot, where's the stair drawing? You shouldn't even know about this, but they, you know, but we are very much a team, like, and Room to Improve is made with a great team. Who make a lot of things happen. They make me look really good. Sorry, that's bad, isn't it? They make me look good. You know,
they show you the way you actually are.
They show, they get a. We film. There's 10 hours. There's 10 days with probably 10 hours. 100 hours goes into every single episode of Room to Improve. So they have an awful lot to choose from. So they can make me look however I want it to be. But it's yeah, I'm just used to it now, and then I suppose throw into the mix Incredible Homes, but that's for me is like a little bit of respite. That's where I get to go away and look at these amazing houses around the world, and they're all kind of really good, strong architectural houses that have won awards, and like you're in there and you get 8 hours. So like I might do the walk around with the homeowner, and that might take 2 hours, and then they'll do beauty shots, and then they'll have to do interviews. So I might get 4 or 5 hours by myself just in that house, just exploring, and you got the full run of everywhere. It's it's a dream. It's an absolute dream.
And what is your favourite project of your own, not one that you visited? I know they're like children, you're not allowed to have one, but you must have one.
Oh, look, I think the ones that are my favourite are probably the biggest challenges. So I think we did one a few years ago in Dún Laoghaire. It was an old boat shop, and you know, I love kind of connecting a house to the outside. I love bringing light in. There's a few different kind of things that are universal across every project. This house didn't even have a footpath outside it, let alone any garden. So it was a real challenge. But I remember seeing the producers sometimes send me videos with the projects, so you get to choose. And I saw it. I picked them from the video. I said, no, I want to do this. I want it really badly. And it was on a very busy street, and so it was all about pulling them up into the top of the building, putting a rooftop terrace on it, getting a view over the, like, but it's still, I suppose it was one of the most challenging and one of my favorites. But they are all, like, we picked them all because they've got a particular architectural problem that we need to. So because of that, then they've all got a special meaning to me.
And see the houses that you visited, do you have a particular architectural hero in them, or is it somebody else that you maybe have followed all your career?
Yeah, I suppose my first, the first kind of hero I had was a guy called Luigi Snozzi. And I remember I was in college one day, and I was in the studio and was designing something, and a tutor came up to me, and I was drawing something. He says, "Oh, I've seen this guy Luigi Snozzi. He does work that is a little bit similar to that, or you could be heavily influenced." And I started by getting magazines. Then I got a couple of books, and then I did my 5th-year thesis on his work. And I remember I just started going out with my wife now at the time, and we went over to Switzerland to see his buildings. And so she arrived at the airport. She had packed. We'd only just started going out.
Is this a romantic weekend away?
She thought so. Whereas I was going on, and I think that kind of set the scene for our marriage from here on. Yeah,
we should have copped it then.
She should have done. She should have done. But I spent most of that week getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning, heading off in the car, breaking into people's houses to get photographs of them, because they were all summer houses in the southern part of down near Locarno and in the Ticino region, and asking people, can I come in and photograph your house? Having a chat with them. But I had an amazing time. I think she did in the end, because still remembers it very, very fondly. And we still have one CD that kind of reminds. It's this really cheesy Italian artist called Eros Ramazzotti, and he was on the radio all of the time. So whenever that song comes on, it reminds the two of us of. And the hotel we stayed in was like, it was, you know, back in the day, it wasn't even back, like, this wasn't that long ago, but like there wasn't even a bathroom in the hotel room. It was out on the corridor with everybody else. And so she wasn't that impressed, but he was kind of my hero, Luigi Snazzi, for years. But like I think there's some incredible Irish architects at the moment, like Grafton architects, Shelley and Yvonne, O'Donnell and Toomey, Taka. There's guys out there who are doing things that I like, architects who I suppose buildings that have layers and layers of depth in their thinking. And I like, during lockdown, what I did is I finally got time to kind of to do things like reading properly, and instead of just skimming through magazines or things. And I listened to a lot of podcasts, and I became obsessed for about 2 weeks with Shelley and Yvonne and their work, and listening to their interviews. And anybody who ever gets a chance should listen to their podcast or look at some of their work. And they were asked last year, or 2 years ago, was to curate the Venice Biennale. And, you know, they're even the thinking behind that was the free space, which is, it's the thing that nobody really, that good architects do really well, is it's the bits of the building that give back to you. So if you leave a space at the front of a building for a bench, or the spaces in between buildings that all of us experience, it's like when you walk through town, like you can walk around Stephen's Green and it feels amazing. And you can go to another part of the city where it's all the buildings are inward looking and they're a little bit colder. And it's grand to walk around there, but there's nothing like walking around Georgian squares. And they're the free spaces. They're the spaces that whoever was designing were thinking just as much about the outside space and the squares as they were about the buildings. So it's even just, you know, sometimes buildings might be ornately decorated on the outside, and there's some amazing streets in Dublin. But that's kind of free space too. It's giving people something to look at, something to enjoy. And you get that in amazing cities like Barcelona, where, you know, you're walking through the streets and you don't notice that you've gone 20k. You've done, because those spaces are giving so much back to you. So I think Shelley and Yvonne and Grafton Architects they're doing amazing work at the moment, and they're Irish and they are world beaters. You don't have to look kind of too far in it to find inspiration, I think, in Ireland.
Describe yourself in one word.
Stubborn.
You mentioned there about that beautiful first weekend away you did. Are you romantic?
I can be, yeah. I'm.
No, so.
Is that what that means?
I think so. Yeah, that's where you're supposed to go. Yes, and I do this and I do that.
Yeah, I'm not a great guy for the gestures. I'm not but I do like cozy nights in. I like going out for dinner. I like going for a walk. Like for me, I suppose during lockdown, myself and Louise we headed out for a few walks, and because our daughter is 15 now, so she could look after the younger two. So we snuck out for two, and that for me is romantic, going for a walk. But I don't buy diamonds or kind of the big gestures, and I'm not great at remembering ever to get flowers, and I'm not great at thing. But for me, talking and connecting with somebody is just as important as the big gestures. It all depends what people think our romance is about, isn't it?
What's the strangest thing a client has ever asked you for in a brief?
I remember I visited a house a long time ago in the countryside, and I met a client who grew up in a farmhouse. And anybody who's grown up in a farmhouse knows that the Aga cooker or the Rayburn or whatever it is probably at the heart of the home, because all the meals are cooked there. But a lot of people love it because they're really warm. So if the rest of the house is freezing, the Aga or the Rayburn or the range is always on and it's warm. And I remember even in my granny's house, when you came in from the cold, you stood with your backside up against it. There was always a little handrail at the front for all the towels drying. But that handrail, you'd hang onto that and you get your backside warmed. It was kind of, it got you far enough away from it that you weren't burnt. But I remember visiting somebody, and because the house was small, her mum's house, the Aga cooker it was in the living room, and then the kitchen was in another kind of back scullery area. And she said to me, I'd like to do up the house, and I'd like to do this, this, and this. I'd like to have the Aga cooker in the sitting room. And I was there, why? And she said, because that's what my mum has. And I said, but it kind of makes it makes sense in your mum's, because your mum's is a small house. It was only a little cottage, and the house is all over the place. So the fridge was kind of outside, the toilets were outside. It makes no sense whatsoever. But she wouldn't give in, and she wanted the Aga cooker in the sitting room. Every time I kind of told her, like, that seems like nonsense. she got really offended over and over again. So it didn't turn into a project. But that's probably one of the strangest things I've ever been asked for. Besides slides and the usual, and you'll get, all that.
Dermot, thank you so much for taking part in Inside Out. You've been amazing support throughout the whole thing. As everybody knows, we've online auctions, we've architects and designers and garden designers giving their time. So, and also you can text donate. So, Dermot, thank you so much for giving your time.
Not at all. Thank you, Gwen, and thanks for doing all of this for the Coombe.
Thank you.